Buenos nachos, amigos, and welcome to Record Breakers, a music podcast where a group of friends gather together to share music with each other, an album at a time. It's like a little book club for music. We all take turns sharing and caring. I'm PETEY Rave.
Mostly sharing.
Yeah, I'm PETEY Rave. And you know, I'm coming to you at 14 sevens. There you go. No,
Yes.
that's an even. I'm just double speed.
15/16.
Yes.
Right.
You're in
15/30 fours. 15/37s.
Meter.
Sure. Here with me is my squad, my crew, my team, my gang. We've got David.
In contrast to the most recent album, this one has a lot of death and murder on it. You know, stuff for the kids.
Yes. We've got Drew.
I do love a good murder.
And we've got Brett.
Yeah, there's murdering going on here, but what do you guys think about weird organs or like jam tracks with like a detour in the middle of them that goes into Space Town?
I do look. I do like a good jam track.
Like it's a jam track where like, hey, hit the space button while we go grab a smoke. Yeah.
Like, yes.
Yes.
I mean, yeah, you have come to the right place if you want to find people who will find the nuance in the weird that you're about to talk about.
Exactly.
Spoiler alert, if more jams were like this and less were like Dave Matthews, I'd be more happy with jam bands, but that's neither here nor there.
This is my brand of weird.
We're here to talk about music. We're here to talk about an album, and the provider of the album this week is David. David, what have you brought for us this week?
I have brought to the Record Breakers podcast an album that is very near and dear to my heart from a band that is also very near and dear to my heart. The band that I have always described as if Radiohead didn't stop doing rock music after OK Computer and still cared about distorted guitars and maybe having the occasional adrenaline shot. A band that philosophically, as much as musically, really kind of shaped me as a music listener. I really like these guys a lot. I really like their frontman a lot. I really like this album a lot. From 2002, it is Porcupine Tree's In Absentia.
Mm-hmm. Drew, what expectations did you have coming into this album?
I went in with only the expectations I had from knowing Dave. It was going to be very smartly put together. It was a rock album, so there was probably going to be some metal under or overtones, depending on how he's feeling that week. But other than that, I really didn't know anything about these guys. I hadn't heard this name before. Prog metal is not a genre that I frequent, so I was excited to get into it.
Brett, what were your expectations coming into this album?
Well, I don't want anyone to take this the wrong way, but I assumed it was going to be a Deej album. But when it got posted into behind the scenes, let's peel back that curtain, in the back channel where we post our upcoming on deck albums, it was posted, and a comment from hasn't been seen in a while, Patrick the Swagger, former co-host here. So,
AKA
that's a
Patty
good one.
McSwag.
Yeah, that's a good one. and like with it inspired it resurrected our pal into the conversation to say, ooh, that's a good one. So I knew it was also one of those albums.
But
So
the
it might have-
unfortunate plot twist is that the person that got Patricio El Svagiero into these kinds of things was in fact yours truly. It was me, Austin.
No, it was you all along.
Me all
It
along.
was me all along. It's a good shit.
You're the Patty McSwaggy
Enabler.
enabler.
He's a pusher.
That specifically made me go, this is either going to be great or it's not going to be great. And that's the only thing.
I'm the Prog
Two
pusher,
data
man,
points
folks.
that I can go off of.
Yes.
But yeah, I had no clue.
Yes.
It was fun. It was extremes. It was always extremes for me with his thing. But
God damn it! I'm looking back. We were another peel back the curtain. Looking back, go check out our on recordbreakerspodcast.com. Go check out our episode page for the Glassjaw Moody Blues.
Everybody
recap
take
episode.
a drink. We mentioned Glassjaw.
Yes.
Let's just get back to our immature podcast that we record on Audacity. Ugh.
Our sad cast.
Yeah, sorry, it's a sad cast.
Yes. It's not quite as
So
sad.
sure.
We
We have a good time around here.
Yes.
pretty happy most days.
But
I can't complain. It's in the contract.
Mm-hmm. I wasn't quite sure what to expect. I oddly enough, for some reason, I don't know why, and I'm gonna get into it, but I've seen this album cover quite a bit before, and I don't know why. But other than that, I wasn't sure what to expect for this. I may be thinking of a different imagery, but I've seen this album cover before. Who posted? But David, how would you describe this album musically?
I would say that if you've probably picked up on the last 2 decades or so, how there are a lot of more forward-thinking metal bands that don't necessarily stay in the wheelhouse of chugga chugga or riffs in 4, you've probably picked up on the influence of progressive rock in the last 20 years. This kind of started with Opeth, a band that I also kind of in the shadows pushed Patrick towards, and their frontman Michael Okerfeldt and his unapologetic fanboyism for Porcupine Tree. Opeth's 2001 album Blackwater Park, kind of their breakout album, was produced and some of the songs co-written and guested by Porcupine Tree frontman and songwriter Steven Wilson. In 2002, it had been noticed that in Absentia, this album had a noticeably heavier edge than previous Porcupine Tree albums, which were still kind of in the 90s alt, but still very Pink Floyd-y, but distorted kind of range. But this album came out after the last few Porcupine Tree albums, and it was noticeably darker and had much more of a heavier edge to it. Porcupine Tree was also originally one of Steven Wilson's joke projects. It originally started as being a parody prog band where Steven Wilson had created this mythical legend of this classic rock band from the 70s that just kind of disappeared off the face of the earth. And as all progressive rock fans, we relentlessly make fun of progressive rock while also unapologetically loving it because we're dorks. But Porcupine Tree kind of started to take off in England, and he recruited some pretty good band members, including the brilliant drummer Gavin Harrison, who is now with King Crimson, and the amazing keyboardist Richard Barbieri. And it eventually made this album, which is considered by the band themselves as their peak. It is really the bridge between being the harder-edged Pink Floyd and the heavier, not quite metal prog without the widdly. Because Steven Wilson does really hate widdly. He hates that a lot.
Yeah.
And he kind of concocted this out of the fact that rock music wasn't really that interesting except for metal for him. Yeah. Again, that comes from a place of relatability. Uh-huh. And it was kind of a bridge album at a time where prog and metal were kind of blending together. And I've always said that prog is essentially what would happen if jazz and metal stopped pretending like they don't like each other and just get a room. And I think that this was a good beginning to a genre that I've really come to really enjoy a lot.
Yeah.
Everyone, longtime listeners of Record Breakers, for all of those albums Swagger brought that had more of a progressive rock lean to it, you're welcome. That was me. I planted that in his head. That was me the whole time.
You're
I've
the
been
one that,
here
that taught
the
him
whole
about
time.
the other bass kick pedal that goes along with the other one that goes.
It was me the whole time.
Yes.
Which is amazing because this album is very much not something that I would have thought was a Patty McSwaggy album.
Yes. But yeah, Drew, how would you describe this album musically?
I guess I could see it as a Patty McSwag album, and I could not see it as a Patty McSwag album. So again, if we're backing up, taking a look behind the curtain, like I said, metal is not a music I go to lately, and it's for a few reasons. A lot of my music listening now besides for the show, tends to be at work, or in the car, like background. So I go to stuff I'm familiar with, or maybe like electronic music that I can just sort of go along with, right?
You know, party rock is in your house all the time.
Party rock is always in my house. Yes.
Never forgive you for party rocking. Ever.
I mean, it's fair. I do party rock.
Wiggle, Drew.
Never.
But, and the reason being is a lot of the time when there's metal, begs a little bit more attention, at least the metal that I tend to like, begs a little bit more attention that I tend to give a lot of times. And this album is very much that. Holy hell, is it very much that. It is something that everything felt well thought out and well intentioned. The composition work in this throughout was really smart. And it was a lot. The things that hit me first and foremost, and I think were really smartly done, was the way that it would weave in and out the drums and the guitars together. It takes a smart, I don't want to say composer, but that puts in your brain Bach, and that's not what I'm, but you know what I mean. Like, to piece that together in a song is not the easiest thing to do. To really have the guitars and the drums play off each other, it's usually drums and bass playing off each other. There's a whole genre. But
a different kind of drum and different kind of bass. But yes.
Yes. That's the joke. There's also a very cool use of sparseness. So, like I said, metal has a lot going to it, and the moments of quiet, I think, are really sort of cool and amplify different points, and it's meant for something. Again, a lot of the metal that I would tend towards is you're very what you would stereotypically, I think of, like, oh, it's the Warhammer D&D fantasy nerd, like it's Camelot and Curry Sauce and Amon Amarth and all that crap. Yeah, okay.
Not my
fair.
flavor of cheese. Not my
Oh,
flavor.
not my flavor of Halford and his kind either.
But towards that, and they, especially something like Camelot, plays with moments of quiet, but it feels like those moments are meant only to bolster the louder moments. Whereas this seemed like it was using those quiet moments like a movie uses quiet moments to make you pay attention to things that you may not have been paying attention to. Also, going back to the drummer, another thing I wanted to touch on was the drumming in this had a tightness to it that is why I think, like, because he plays the drums, so like why I think Patty McSwaggerson's. I'm just kind of
King Crimson now.
yes.
But
Those are dollar bill signs for the S's. Just to...
He's hanging out with Wiz Khalifa. Dollar bill signs for S's. Wow, call back to yesterday. That's weird. But the tightness in the drums, I think, is also something that is like super enviable. There's other stuff you can get into, like weird tonality things, which are Will and the other things, and doing that sort of, you start pointing out songs because each one felt like its own little package in that way. But there's a lot going on here that's really, really good.
Brett, how would you describe this album musically?
So when I call an album a Deej album, what I mean generally is it's music that's gonna switch its timing. It's gonna be technically complex, not necessarily complicated, but complex. Like there's stuff that there are ends that don't get tied in this music in a lot of Deej type albums. A lot of the times they'll bring something that has the screaming, prog metal like guitars and the drums doing the, slightly delayed with the feats. This one, not so much. There's some of it, but it's not a whole lot. Like the guitar tone even, when they are ripping, which there's guitar solos that are ripping, they don't sound, they're not the, bang your head type. It's more of there are a lot of different tones. This is probably one of the most broad, like, it's hard because it sits in the middle of a genre that's pretty broad anyway, but also the album goes so many different ways. I mean, there's straight up Pink Floyd tribute in the middle of this album. And like at other times there's like it's like you're hanging out with like the cousins of 311 having a jam session. There's also a very UK feel to this. In some points you can feel like the influence of British pop rock of the late 90s.
That would be Stephen Wilson's Project No Man.
Yeah, so like you get like a lot of different things, but like whereas a lot of people that throw back to that I've heard throwing back or like giving hints to what they were into musically, will do a lot of the throwbacks to the old rockers that I'm more familiar with. This is throwing back to pop like sounds of music that I don't even have the vocabulary to explain, but it smells like it's very it has the same waxy smoke filled music video sound of like a Sting mid 90s, but not Sting in the mid 90s. It's like that feel. I don't know how to there's got to be the oeuvre of that Britishness.
Britpop.
Yeah.
But not Spice Girls, not that kind of Britpop.
No.
Yeah, that I was going to say there was vocal tonality in usage that like I felt like I kept wanting to place it on something and couldn't. Like the way he like the sort of legato lines and stuff like that. So that actually didn't think about that.
Yeah. Yeah, it pretty much has a nice like feel to it, and like you guys said, it goes into a lot of the places where you expect it to prog go, but not all the way, and it has some nice like dreamy moments as well, and some nice like ambient moments, and yeah, you can definitely see
psychedelic moments, even
psychedelic moments, yeah.
We'll talk about Wedding Tales in a second. Jesus.
Yes. And it gets into those moments like where you can see the influences very very plainly.
I feel like you're under the influences.
Yes.
God, Jesus Christ.
Drugs. Yeah, let's talk about.
Yes, the Record Breakers, your go-to place for
drugs.
I don't even have the website jokes. anymore. I'm
MDMA
out.
breakers here. For
Yes,
you.
that's what's your test?
I really
your go-to
was
test,
high when I
Drew?
was talking about that Machine Gun Kelly album.
Yes,
I really
yes.
was high. In the
I
words
mean,
of Dave Chappelle,
live the
I
gimmick.
am high. I'm high.
But yeah. Speaking of being high, David, what would be some of the key tracks for you?
Blackest Eyes, I think, is a good kind of teaser litmus test for what people might assume this album might be. But then the rest of the album really kind of pulls the rug out from under you. And I always thought that was really fun in that they had this opening song that almost sounds like it could be on the radio somewhere, but then nope. The Sound of Music. I think this might have been the song that turned me into a prog snob. This might have been the song. Although, like
Ow.
Steven Wilson,
Please explain.
okay.
Yes.
One of the main lyrics of the songs says, "Music of rebellion makes you want to rage, but it's made by millionaires who are nearly twice your age." And there's a lot of this song that talks about what I like to call music that sounds like it's made from a factory. And I think this was the song that made me say, oh, I'm really cynical about most music now. Most of it kind of sucks, especially in America. Most of it kind of sucks. However, post Porcupine Tree, Steven Wilson has publicly several times apologized for his 1970s vinyl snobbery. He is vehemently and publicly apologized for it. And in his solo career, he's basically gone full art pop. So make of that what you will.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, he has on tracks publicly apologized for being an arrogant snob. So yeah same.
Mm-hmm.
Wedding Nails is the track that I always like to say is the one for the bass players. So for the bass players out there, Wedding Nails is a song that I think you guys might enjoy. As I said at the beginning, there's a lot of lyrics about death and murder on this album. I wish that it were ironic, but he has said in the past, Steven Wilson has said that he used Porcupine Tree to just kind of let that dark side of his mind go wild. And yeah, there's a lot of that on this album. The Creator has a master tape, and Strip the Soul are kind of this interesting balance of being almost Tool songs, but not quite as widdly. They're Tool songs, but not. But they're easily the darkest songs of Porcupine Tree's catalog to this point. And I just think in between those two songs, Heart Attack and A Lay-By is a nice reprieve.
Mm-hmm. Drew, what would be some of the key tracks for you?
So, as David said, Blackest Eyes. Something about the guitar, specifically the tone, not the line or the riff or anything like that, but the guitar tone in the intro, reminded me for those first 20 seconds. I was like, is this gonna be some weird Deftones era stuff? No, that quickly changed. But that 20 seconds, I was real confused. I
was thinking Presidents of the United States. It sounded like the opening to Peaches a little bit. I was like, there's no way that's not that. Yeah, but yeah, I get the same thing.
Line, the line, but the tone. Yep. I can see that. The hollow, but not hollow.
It sounds like the 90s.
I'm gonna try and find something a bit more steady next time, guys.
No.
No,
this isn't a qualitative opinion. It sounded like a thing that people did, and they don't do it anymore.
And I like the Deftones. Call me
I do
Navarro
too.
on this podcast because Deftones are great.
Yeah, they are.
But this one was where I started to immediately I keyed into, the drums and the guitar are really playing off each other in really cool ways. And I think this is a really good way to show that. Yes, it gets into some weird different stuff going on weirder stuff like wedding nails. Like this, I don't want to say this is a bad thing because I'm not saying that the band doesn't know what they're doing, or that I don't like them. I do like them, but this sounded wedding nails to me in most of it sounded like Megadeth if they were just way better, in a lot of ways. But then the effects came in, and that's where I was like, oh, okay. Because I remembered seeing Porcupine Tree and psychedelic somewhere on the Wikipedia page, like about page. Oh, okay, I'm gotcha.
There's a lot of that on their earlier stuff.
Yeah. Well, I was like, I can pick up what they're putting down at this point. I can understand where like those words might be connected to them. But then the end, collapse light into earth. This smooth vocal, this pretty piano, but still like bits of crunch here and there. Just it comes in hard and it leaves light, which I think is a very cool way to build that. So
that's what she said. Brett, what would be some of the tracks for you?
I'm trying to think of Megadeth, but better. And part of what makes Megadeth better is taking all the vocals out.
It is an instrumental track.
Yes, I'm like,
Yeah.
Those are my favorite parts.
Yeah.
I love you, Dave, but
you can't sing.
I'm sorry. But yeah, okay. We're gonna do a little quick hits here, because boy, I wrote down some notes.
Give me your ooh-woos, Brett. Give me your ooh-woos.
Some of these were my first listen. Yes, for you. Lips of Ashes at around the 3:20 mark. There's like some 80s cop movie montage guitar. Like, oh my God. It's not just straight because like it would just be somebody playing the blues. Or playing. We couldn't find a saxophone to do it in this echoey room, so go in there with this guitar. But this was like a little bit more advanced than your average, 80s cop montage, sunset car driving down through L.A. Sound of Music, bass. How low can you go? Tone of the most 2002 radio rock sounds, but the chorus has like a completely different feel. And it has that European pop rock feel and some organ. Wedding Nails. So this is, if you've ever spent time in an area where like a practice area where there's like musicians that like know how to play stuff but don't know how to play together, and they just do an endless jam that they can't find a way out of. And it's mainly like the drummer and the bassist know each other, and so they know how to jam pretty well, but then some guy comes in and he's like, okay, it's one of those songs. It sounds like it was a real good time to play. And then also like they set a cup of coffee down and it hit the space button, and it had the intermission, that good times. And Prodigal. Let's talk about nodding to Dark Side of the Moon here. The organ and the warbled out reverb guitar and the horror movie cover piano tone, like whenever they slow down a rock song for they show a black and white photo of a swing set and it's like, and then at the bottom of my notes, the creator has master tape. The opening, I swear, first thing I heard when I heard the opening to that was the opening to Stonehenge by Spinal Tap, and that made my day well. And it's like,
yes,
there's just like this. That just might be a prog rock thing. That if you're gonna have like an opening, you better have a mandolin and little people, and
it absolutely is.
Exactly.
Those are all everything I have mentioned up until this point are things I enjoy as a human. These are a lot of things.
Yes. I would say, the the quality is good, and you guys pretty much hit a lot of the songs I would put out there. I would just give another shout out to Trains is really fantastic. Lips of Ashes is nice and dreamy. And it's nice and dreamy and psychedelic, and it's really nice. And the it works really well. Gravity Eyelids is nice. It just has a nice like feel to it, and it has a nice like build to it. It's really cool. And yeah, and Prodigal has that like throwback, like it's like Pink Floyd, like Dark Side of the Moon tribute harmonies that are just fantastic. It just like caught me off guard, and it was really nice. But yeah, let's bring it back around the horn, talk about some conclusive thoughts. Drew, what would be your conclusion on this album as a whole?
It's hard to quantify. Besides, it's real good. Again, it's this type of music I think deserves your ear. And it makes me sad that I don't get more time to sit and just listen and dive into this type of music much. Because if you don't, you're missing things. Now, that is not to say that if you're a casual listener, you shouldn't check this out. But it is saying that it will give you exactly as much as you give it attention. And at a certain point, jazz was mentioned. And what...
Don't invoke jazz.
Gonna invoke jazz.
Jazz and metal just need to stop bullshitting and just admit that they like each other.
Toxic relationship at best. I say, let them keep fighting.
Sometimes the fights give good stuff, but it always... The reason jazz and like this type of like prog rock stuff sort of, to me in my mind, always intertwined is it always feels like unless they break out, unless they get big, it's going to be musicians playing to other musicians at a certain point. You're kind of like, hey, listen to this thing I did. And you're doing it for a group of other musicians, and they're going to get it way more than like a broader room. That said, this also can appeal to the broader room.
As a room full of musicians.
Porcupine Tree did like have some carry to them. I actually heard them on the radio once.
The radio?
Blew my mind.
Like in the Michigan?
Terrestrial radio.
Yeah.
It blew my mind.
Wow.
Oh my goodness.
Tune in my aerial.
Brett, how would yes. How would you conclude on?
Sorry.
Yeah. How would you conclude on this album as a whole?
I mean, this is a perfectly fine album that's full of a lot of really neat things, and I liked my time with it. I'm not in love with it, but the Record Breakers cultural exchange worked again because now I know this music, and I like because we've had a lot of this genre, and I dabble in it myself, just not anything recent. So like getting to
Brett
see
doesn't jam it into his neck like I do.
I mean, this is from when I was like a teenager too, so it's like, man, this sounds like music. Like you can taste the little flavors of the era in this. So there's a little bit of like tone nostalgia that I gotta play. But like at the end of the day, like this is a little more wandery than I am. It doesn't tie all of its loose ends and its songwriting, and that's fine. That was it. That is how this genre has become in the modern era. So it's not a bad thing, but it is not a me thing, and it's probably, I would say, more for the you'll get what you put in is a good way of saying it.
Yeah.
But also, if you know if you know the difference between one flavor and the next, you might be better off. If your palate is mature, you might get a little more out of it than, say, my grandmother.
Yeah.
Like this is not something I would just put on in like mixed company and expect everybody to be like, yeah, fuck yeah. Like,
Well, no.
but that's most music in general that I listen to as well. So it's not a qualitative statement. That's just the facts.
Yeah.
Grandma might not want to jam with you.
Yeah.
Unless she plays bass, and like, God, does this album, like, if you play bass,
Bass
bring it
players,
for you.
Slapping
That's
the
where
bass,
you're.
man.
That's where you're wrong. My grandmother, huge Meshuggah fan. Like,
Wow.
Yes.
Steven Wilson even said that Meshuggah was like one of his biggest modern influences. Straight up.
So yeah, it is a very interesting #interesting album.
Buddy drink.
It captivates in fun ways. It's, you know, it like we've talked about with these similar albums, it may not be for everyone, but it's for a lot of people. And I think a lot of people will get an enjoyment out of it. It's well conditioned and well set up, and it's just pretty solid. And works well. It just it gets into those weird moments, but it gets into those really fun Pink Floydy moments as well, and it's just cool. But yeah, David, how would you conclude on this album as a whole?
For me, this was a very serendipitous album because it was an example of, in a span of like 3 years, where a bunch of different musicians were all doing different projects with one another and different transmogrifications of musical projects and albums, and they were all just kind of super transformative for me. And this was right there with them. I love that Porcupine Tree managed to find a way to keep some of their psychedelic stuff from some of their earlier albums, while also giving you just enough of a crunch to make you pay attention and not totally drift off. I think they really did that well with this album and albums later, in that they would knock you around just a bit and then sit you down and make sure you're sitting comfortably. I think that this was a good example of Steven Wilson not completely abandoning his pop sensibilities and simultaneously allowing himself to just stare into the void, which was really, really cool. And it worked out really, really well and created some really interesting album art.
Yeah.
I think that on top, a lot of this is accessible. But when you really take the chance to really kind of chew on it and sit on it, you get a full meal of a really great album. But it's something that you really should sit and chew on. It's one to really sit down and give it a listen. I think the rest of the guys said that this is not background music unless you're like a super prog nerd like I am. And if you are a super prog nerd like I am, this album is probably already like high on your list of modern prog. You can put it on in the background because it's just already encoded into your DNA. But I think that there's something here that people will enjoy, even if it is goofy prog rock.
It's the first of BioShock.
Yeah.
The first BioShock surface level, great, but go that little bit deeper, like, oh, this is weird. Okay.
It's Tekken 3.
Yes. You got it.
Easy to start, hard to master.
This is an album you aerate, you swirl around, you give a good sniffy sniff, and then you swish it around in your mouth before you drink it.
2002, good year.
Mm-hmm.
Debatable.
I
was
can't
for
look
me.
at Slack while we podcast. I
It
have
was
to
for me.
stop looking at Slack.
Yeah,
while-
you do.
Yes.
Yeah, that's the rule.
silliness.
Like that's the game. Like behind the scenes, everybody, it's my job to make other people bust up, whether it be using an Urkel GIF, which I did not use today, or whether or not, a photo I found of Sting glowing blue.
Yes.
A dream of rain.
It's pretty fantastic. Yeah, those are our thoughts on Porcupine Trees in Absentia. As we go power through to our main event of the evening, the moment we've all been waiting for. We get into our haiku reviews. You don't have to put on the red light, but you do have to put your haiku glasses on. I don't know. Put your haiku pants on. As we get into the
haiku pants.
The haiku reviews and slap on that bass. Let's get down to the nitty gritty. Haikumero numero uno. Drew, what is your haiku?
Pretty but crunchy, with good smart composition. Not Absentia.
Mm-hmm. Brett, what is your haiku?
A pretty good time. Goes on interesting jaunts. Lots going on here.
Yes. My haiku. Good times prog rock sounds with influences on sleeve. It's pretty darn good. And David, what is your haiku?
Not really fluffy, but god damn, I love this one. Prog, not quite metal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You can of course find this album in Absentia on our Spotify playlist. Play Record Breakers the home game. Do your due diligence and your due diligence. Follow along at home. Do your homework. You can find it on all the episodes in the show notes. The link there. On the Spotify playlist would be next week's record, and that is provided by Brett. Brett, what have you got for us next week?
I'm stealing a gimmick. Deej, it's up to you now. You get to make the choice. We're going to the year 1995. I've got the we can continue with the bass guitar direction, or we can go along with the side project initially thing. Like we can either keep it down low or we can take it to a side project.
Ooh, I like the side projects. Side projects go places. Let's go side project.
Okay, we're going to go to the 1995 album Foo Fighters by Foo Fighters. An album I have listened to many times, but the last time I listened to it was on a cassette tape. So we're going back in time.
We're going
back in time.
Yes.
Thank you.
You're gonna.
That synced up really well, boys. Well
Yes,
done.
I mean, if Back to the Future Part 3 is going to inject itself into anything.
Yes.
Pete, in post, if you could just when we sing that, if we do sync up as well as they think we did, go ahead and put two flaming tracks across the screen,
Yes.
just like
Fluffy
tires
guitar
going across on fire.
to spin your fluffy bass guitar.
Yes. Yes, I look forward to that. But yeah. Go check that out. Go check out our Spotify playlist. Listen along. Get ready for next week. Do your homework. Jam out to it. It's gonna be a fun time. This is gonna be a fun album to talk about. Because it has one hit you remember, but not the other hits, and it's an earlier album that you remember. So it's
as immediately post grunge as you can get.
Yes. Yes. So look forward to that, but that'll be next week, and this is this week, and you can of course find us all over the internet. David is at Call Me DJM, Drew is at XTruciferX, Brett is at HeyBBBRD, HIBBITOIBIBBARD. I'm at PD Rave. The show's at 4 Record Breakers. That's the number 4 Record Breakers. RecordBreakersPodcast.com, RecordBreakersPodcast@gmail.com. Rebelli.net for this and other shows. Rebelli TV on YouTube and on Twitch. On Twitch, follow us along there as we stream every Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Tuesdays we do D&D. Wednesdays we do this record breaker thing. Thursdays we do space trucking. We've been doing the No Man's Sky, or the No Man's Ski, as we like to say.
In space, everyone can hear you honk.
Yes, exactly.
Great soundtrack.
Really fantastic, fun times had at the Twitch channel. And you could, of course, also, if you happen to be a Twitch Prime subscriber, you can
Give me your Bezos bucks.
Give us your free Bezos money. Throw that free sub our way.
PETEY works really hard on all of this. Help him out.
Yes. And maybe someday I will finish setting up that my business checking account so that I can actually look at it. But that'll be someday.
Is Amazon Prime in Australia our biggest growth potential from last year?
Yes.
Apparently.
We'll see.
Bonza.
Yes.
They love our Midwestern and not Midwestern voice.
Yes.
Shrimp on the Barbie.
Gonna drink some tinnies and do a shoey. And
Dude,
C words. We're gonna use the C word
Rise of lights.
a lot.
Yes. Also, yes. You gotta be joking me. You gotta be joking me.
Next year on Spotify as a rewind, biggest growth of drop off.
Yes.
Australia.
Yes. I don't even watch WWE, but I miss the
Wait.
Iconics. Biggest
They
mistake.
broke up. That team is the fucking dumbest bullshit. God damn it! In an era of Vince McMahon doing some
The
dumb
bass
bullshit.
guitars.
Thanks for listening to the
Yeah,
Record
Yes.
Podcast.
I don't have
but
to
yeah.
really talk about
how
Yes.
great the Iconics were. They were
Until
so-
next time, hasta los huevos.
Hasta lasagna, don't get any onion.
Toodaloo.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.